good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you are, whoever you are. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, I've got a guest on the Oliver Perry Show, of course, as always. This guest is by the name of Raphael Collazo. He is a real estate agent. A commercial real estate agent. Let me correct that. Commercial real estate agent. He is a writer. He is an author of 3 books. I think he's got a fourth or fifth one coming now. He is also the creator of the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, which is an amazing podcast on real estate investing, specifically when it comes to commercial real estate space. And let's just go ahead and get into it. Raphael, how are you, sir?
How's it going, Oliver? Great seeing you as always.
Hey, man, the pleasure is absolutely mine.
For those of you guys who don't know, actually, Oliver and I met back a few years ago. Actually, now it's crazy to think how long it's been, but we met here in Louisville, and we've been keeping in touch ever since. So I'm excited to be on your show.
Thanks, man. I'm really excited to have you. It has been a very, very long time, and I know I've got context. So let's give the guests some deeper context, or sorry, the audience some deeper context on you. If you could please give me your backstory, Raphael.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start from the beginning. So my name is Raphael Collazo. I'm a commercial real estate agent here in Louisville, Kentucky. As far as my background's concerned, I was actually born in Northeast Italy to Italian mother and Puerto Rican father. Traveled around Europe most of my life, and then eventually made it over to Arizona, where I went to high school, and then went to Arizona State and got an engineering degree. Got into the software space. I was working with a company that implemented software systems for government agencies for about 4.5 years, and that gave me the opportunity to travel to DC, Puerto Rico, and eventually made it over here to Louisville, where we implemented the software system for the city of Louisville, for the financial software system. And then I made a transition over to commercial real estate back in 2019. And ever since, I've been operating as a broker or a real estate agent, a commercial real estate agent here in the Louisville area. So that's kind of a high level overview of who I am. I work with, business owners, investors, dealing with multifamily properties, retail, industrial, and we've done a lot in the land space as well. So that's a high-level overview of who I am, I guess.
Ooh, buddy, that is a high-level overview. That's awesome, man. So I wanted to make sure today was one of my favorite topics to talk about, and that's branding. And you have done very, very well for yourself in the branding space, specifically when it comes to commercial real estate investing and just as a commercial real estate agent as well. Tell me how you came up with that idea to start your branding journey, and what did that look like when starting out?
Yeah, sure. So I think in general, anytime you're in a sales or business development role, people have to know, like, and trust you before they do business with you. And so in order for you to kind of cut the distance between that amount, that the know, like, and trust phase, becoming recognized as an expert in your space helps immensely in that amount and that effort. And so what I decided to do was I started a YouTube channel that talked about different commercial real estate topics. I did a lot of FAQ videos where we talked about, like, what's real estate depreciation? How do you evaluate multifamily properties? And every week I would release a particular video regarding, that sort of thing. And then I also started doing a commercial real estate meetup virtually, where we started interviewing people from all over the country talking about different commercial real estate topics. So we had people who talked about industrial investing. We had people who talked about triple net investing. We had people who talked about commercial property management. We had people who talked about real estate development. So really grabbing people from all over the country to talk about these topics did a few things. Number one, it created a group of people that knew of who I was because I was providing this unique content, and it recognized me as an expert in these particular fields, even though I don't necessarily have a significant amount of experience as a real estate developer or even a commercial real estate investor. But since I was drawing in people who were experts, interviewing them, and then gathering that information, the perception is that I am in fact an expert. And obviously over time, that's helped build me into a brand as a commercial real estate agent. And now when I interact with people, a lot of times they know that I'm in the commercial real estate space, and that in and of itself helps, bridge the gap of trust. So I'd be happy to kind of elaborate a little bit more if you'd like on that.
Yeah, let's talk about the know, like, and trust factor, because it's something that we hear all the time with the know, like, and trust. And know, like, and trust for someone who's starting out is relatively a foreign thought process, right? We know we got to get online and we talk, but what causes them to really know, like, and trust? Is it because you're there all the time, or is it because what the information you're giving out, or is it a combination? What happens there?
So I would say the most important thing is know. Like people have to know who you are. You could be the coolest person in the world, you can be the biggest expert in the world, but if no one knows who you are, it doesn't matter. So really getting yourself out there is the first and most important thing. And then people will make the determination whether they like you or trust you, right? There's going to be people who watch my content that absolutely hate me, and that's fine. That not everyone's going to like you in this world, and that's completely fine. But there's going to be a subsect of those individuals that watch the content that really resonate with what I'm saying, and they like me, and they potentially would trust me as well. And so what eventually happens is once you actually make connection with them by going to coffee or interacting with them in a physical setting, now you've already kind of bridged that gap, and you have a better opportunity to be able to win their business if they're a prospect, or just them becoming an advocate for you in another business setting. So
I love it. I love it. That makes perfect sense. And for those of you who are watching and listening, if you heard the ding, that's because Raphael hit on a very key point. You might want to rewind it, go listen to it, take a look at it. Also, if you're curious, you'd like to ask questions, please, by all means, leave them in the chat. Let us know that you have a question and we can ask it to Raphael. Now, let's moving on, Raphael. You created quite a bit. Now, with all the know, like, and trust factor, that's at the beginning and kind of you understanding that's what you wanted to get after. But what made you pick the platforms you went with? Because you went with LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube as well. And I'm assuming YouTube is kind of by proxy of everything else, but I feel as though LinkedIn is kind of your main effort. How did you decide what was going to be your main effort and how you wanted to attack that?
yeah, so it really just depends based on the industry that I'm in. In commercial real estate, I tend to deal with business owners and investors that buy commercial property, and a lot of those individuals operate within LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is obviously the platform that I chose to put as much effort as I could into trying to build a brand on. And in order to do that, I created groups on LinkedIn. I have regular events that I broadcast on LinkedIn, so people that have a LinkedIn profile can register for those events. And we've been having some great showings at our meetings. We've been getting between 50 to 100 people that tune in to these live broadcasts via Zoom. And then obviously I broadcast them live on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. As far as YouTube is concerned, YouTube's the second largest search engine on the planet. So as from a search engine optimization perspective, it's a phenomenal platform to start advertising on, especially if you can start ranking for some keywords. Because when you're talking about how-to content, for example, right, let's say you want to know what real estate depreciation is, right? And the title of your video is what's real estate depreciation, and within the keywords you also reference that. If you rank for that keyword, anytime someone types in that particular keyword, you show up in the search results, and that increases the likelihood of them actually clicking on your content, which again, know, like, and trust, right? If they click
Right.
on your content, now they get familiar with who you are, and the likelihood of them subscribing is a lot higher as well. So those are the reasons for those two. And obviously in Facebook, that's more of just a community building type of platform. I have a lot of people on Facebook, so it just is a natural thing. I post it on LinkedIn, so might as well engage people on Facebook. And I know a lot of people having success on Instagram in particular for commercial real estate. I know a few commercial agents like Tyler Cobble and various other people are putting a good amount of effort into Instagram, so that can also be a great platform. It's just one of those platforms I haven't put as much time into.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So now this is news. This is news to me, first of all. So I used to attend, full transparency, everybody. I used to attend the Louisville real estate investor meeting that Raphael and my mentor Luke put together. And early on, it was, if I remember correctly, it was like two of us. It was myself and one other person, which is amazing because, like you said, we've known each other for like maybe 4 or 5 years now. And even in that time frame, the amount of growth, what causes that growth? What was the kind of catalyst to what you guys were doing that made it continue to grow?
Sure. So there's actually a few meetups that I'm involved with. The Louisville Real Estate Investor Meetup Group with Luke, who's an awesome guy. If you guys haven't had a chance to connect with him, you definitely need to. That grew pretty organically, actually. As you mentioned, I mean, our first meeting, I believe we had like 10 or 15 people show up, and that's with Luke and I dragging people to come to the event. And what I think is the reason why I was able to grow to pre-pandemic level, where we were getting between 80 to 100 people showing up every single month, is that we kind of reinforced every month why we were meeting, and then we tried to make sure that the speakers that we brought could provide great content, and then created a structure for the meeting. People want to know that what they're getting into. They want to have structure. So
Right.
understanding that the first hour was for networking, understanding that the speaker was going to speak for no more than 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. That creates structure, that creates stability, and that's what people crave. So being able to do that and being consistent with our approach, saying, look, continue to engage with the group. This is the reason why we're meeting. And then essentially us, Luke and myself and everyone else, engaging with all the members and making them feel welcome, and feeling like they're gaining value from the content or the meetup was actually what enabled us to grow as big as we did. And obviously on the commercial real estate end, I run a meetup called the Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup. It's a virtual meetup, and we bring in speakers from all across the country to talk about commercial real estate topics. And that's virtual. So I'm able to draw in people from New York and, California, all across the country. I mean, we've had people tune in outside of just the United States. So it's kind of cool to see.
Wow. Yeah, I remember one of the big ones was the 13. I'm blanking. It was the 13,
1031.
1031. Why am I losing my mind on that?
But yeah, Harry Borders spoke, and I think we had about 80 or 90 people on the call, and then we had probably about 10 or so live on the LinkedIn and Facebook. So, I mean, that was a great showing, and we had a really good response from the video itself. We had people commenting on the video and engaging, so it was good. It was a great event.
That's fantastic. So you talked a little bit about, in that just now, you talked about the structure and consistently giving them what they wanted as far as the audience. Let's get into the granular detail of that, because that's super important, because you can show up consistently, but if you show up consistently, you constantly change the message. It becomes difficult to get that same group of people because they're not sure what's happening. How did you guys ensure that every time you guys hit that conference or that discussion, how did you make sure it fed into what you guys wanted to get after for your audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the main point here is that people crave consistency. One of the reasons why large organizations are successful is because they have systems and processes in place that people can expect and understand what's going on. I mean, look at McDonald's, who's been able to be as successful as it has. I mean, there's much better food than McDonald's out there, but you know exactly what you're getting every time you show up to McDonald's. And that's a big reason why they've been able to be as successful as they have. And you see this in organizations like Toastmasters. You see this in organizations like BNI, which is an organization I'm involved with. It's all about structure and reinforcing to people who are showing up on a regular basis why you're doing what you're doing. So, again, you can apply this to a real estate meetup. You can apply this to growing a business. You can apply it to any type of endeavor where you're going to be trying to get a lot of people involved in a shared goal and mission. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the high level logic behind it.
No, that's some good logic. That makes absolute sense. And the point that you made with, McDonald's and Toastmasters and all this, like, that is exactly, I think, spot on. Because even in daily life, everything that we see, every brand that we know has a consistent message that comes across. Rolex for luxury watches, Mercedes, and the first thing you think is excellence. BMW, it's an amazing drive. Everybody and everything that's in business, that is working in business or created a brand, has that kind of layout. Now, with that said, let's talk about your brand, because you've really, really built a following, specifically, like we said before, on LinkedIn. What is the difference in the language that you use when you're on LinkedIn versus when you're on Facebook or YouTube, or is there a difference at all?
Well, again, since I'm in the commercial space, it's a little bit different. A lot of the people that I target via the groups that I create are in the space. So what I've done in order to make sure that my message is hitting the right audience is I created a LinkedIn group that's called the Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup. And each month or every other week, essentially, I host an event that is a topic related to commercial real estate. So our next topic is going to be talking about retail management. So property management for retail properties. How do they secure properties to manage? And then how do you reposition properties that have been, maybe anchor tenants left? And how do you essentially reposition that property so that it becomes more profitable going forward? So we're going to be interviewing a gentleman named Chris Ressa, who manages his company manages tons of retail properties across the United States, and so he's going to have a lot of insights to share. So really creating the LinkedIn group and then inviting people who are that target audience for you, and then building a community through that is how I've been able to kind of build that brand on LinkedIn. And it's growing, it's continuing to grow every month, which is pretty awesome. I mean, we started out with a couple, like 50 members or so, and now we're at 450 and continuing to grow, and people are engaging with the content. You know, we're getting pretty good engagement on people actually showing up to the meetings, which is awesome. And it's becoming a reoccurring thing where people are asking what the next event's going to be, and et cetera. So, yeah, it's about creating that community similar to what you see in an in-person setting. Translate that into an online setting, and then, you know, if your target audience on LinkedIn, target them on LinkedIn. If they're on Facebook, target them on Facebook. If they're on Instagram, target them on Instagram.
That's amazing. That's fantastic advice, man. That's really fantastic advice, because, and I'm going to be honest here, I used to think that, hey, the more that I'm online, I can get to people to come to me. I would call it the bait and trap more than me having to go out and hunt. But I realized very quickly, like you said, a lot of it isn't just the video face, it's the actual engagement, reaching out to people, talking to people, having that conversation. Because no matter what you do, even in this COVID world, yes, being on video is good, being able to do video conference is amazing, but a phone call is so much better. And now with that said, how has that, you branding yourself in the LinkedIn and the YouTube and all this stuff, how has it affected your business and how you function as a real estate, not just a real estate investor, like I said, but as a commercial real estate agent? How's that affected you?
Yeah. So again, brand recognition, right? So if I walk into a room, you know, not everyone, but there are some people walk up to me. It's like, oh, don't you do commercial real estate? I've seen your stuff online. You know, that initial thing is something that, you know, if I didn't have a year ago. And that's going to continue to grow over time as I continue to go to in-person events. Obviously, I haven't been able to go as too many just because we're currently in the pandemic situation. But again, things are starting to open back up, and I'm going to be engaging with people in person, and that's only going to add to me building that brand. As far as online is concerned, I've been able to reach out to people, DMing them on LinkedIn, and just having conversations with them. Or people have reached out to me as a result of a meetup that I've done, and they said, that was an awesome event. Really appreciate everything. Would love to just connect, you know? And so that's I've been able to connect with people via just the DMs there. Obviously, because of my online presence and my book now, people who research me online, they see, oh, wow, this guy, he does the podcast, he does the meetups, he has a book out, you know? So anyone who searches me online is going to know automatically that, you know, I'm a credible person, and therefore it kind of lubricates the process of me getting at least a face-to-face meeting with a potential client. So that's how it's helped me in my business so far.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing, because let's not understate. How many books do you have out right now? Let's go over the books, bro. How many books do you have right now?
5.
And you're working on a 6th.
Yeah.
How many books are you going to do?
Who knows? But so the first 4 books actually were related to, I mean, when I first started writing, the reason I started writing, because I was lost and confused in what I was doing. You know, I was in a lucrative job, and I was living in Puerto Rico. You could throw a stone from my house to the beach. You know, I was living, quote unquote, the high life, but inside I didn't feel that way. And so I started doing a lot of internal research and trying to get an understanding of who I was and what my passion was. And through that process, I started uncovering a lot of personal development tips and everything else. I started reading a ton of articles, and I realized that all the information was kind of scattered around the internet, and it was very fragmented. And so that's when I decided to write a blog, which eventually turned into the books. And so I created a series of books called the Millennial Playbook series that talk about concepts that are pertinent to the millennial generation. And the topics on the books cover are personal development, professional development, exercise, healthy eating habits, and finances. So there's 4 books out right now for the Millennial Playbook series. And then my most recent book, Before You Sign That Lease, The Small Business Owner's Guide to Leasing Commercial Space, focuses on helping business owners that are looking to lease commercial space get from point A to point B with as little heartache as possible. Because I've seen a lot of business owners that have signed bad leases, and it's just really a bad thing, a bad experience. So
yeah. But even then, like you said, and it harkens back to exactly what you said earlier, is you give your audience what you think is going to help them. It's less about the money. It's less about the number. It's more about the number of people you can assist. And in your case, with the Millennial Playbook, I know for a fact you've assisted quite a few people, because I don't think there's anybody who's at an age where we are that hasn't been through that kind of thought process, been through somewhere where, they're on the beach, like you said, and there's something's just missing. And being able to go through that and walk through that with somebody who's experienced it is actually really cool. So
and
also,
I'll even say one more thing on top of that. And you're right about the numbers. I mean, I'm not going to be the next J.K. Rowling. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But another thing that it helps you with is communication, and that's
right.
an unsung benefit of writing a lot of books. Is that I'm an engineer by trade. I'm not naturally a very good writer, nor a very good communicator. But because of my ability, because I've written 5 books and I've written probably close to 1 million unique words and edited a million unique words, you don't think that's going to help me with my communication skills? You don't think that's going to help me effectively convey a message to a large group of a large audience? Of course it is. So even if you don't necessarily see the direct monetary benefits from selling the books, the exercise itself will pay huge dividends over time as an improvement in your ability to communicate. So that's another thing that I would say is a benefit.
No, that's wow, that's not something that I thought about when you think about writing books. But it does make sense, because the same thing happens when you get comfortable with being online, like we are here on a live platform. Very quickly, you start to understand, okay, I say, I'm thinking, these are catchwords. So you realize, okay, I got to cut back on that. I've got to change this and that. You look at your mannerism, how clear you say a word, how clear you don't say a word. All that kind of develops and even affects your regular life. So that makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, for those who are watching or listening right now, if you're on the podcast, I apologize. You can't ask questions. It's a little bit late, but it's okay. You can catch us on the next live. But if you are watching live right now, please feel free to ask questions. We may be able to do a Q&A section here at the very end. We have about 9 minutes going, but we're going to keep talking about branding. And Raphael, so branding, again, there's a lot that goes into it. I'd like to talk specifically about how you came up with the design for your brand, because that's something everybody seems to struggle with. They'll get to a point where particularly if you can't afford to go and purchase a designer or get somebody to do it for you, it's always difficult, you feel like, when you're doing it. How did you come up with the CRE Academy and your colors? Because everything on your stuff looks clean and professional. Like, it looks good. How did you come up with that, and what happened? What was that process like?
So I think the first part of the process was looking at people that I admired that were already in the space and seeing how they approached their podcast. One of the people I referenced was Tyler Chesser, who's a buddy of mine here in town, and he runs the Elevate podcast, and it's a top 200 business podcast in the world, and he does a lot of really cool stuff, and he's had some phenomenal guests on his podcast, and so kind of taking some pieces of inspiration from his podcast. I obviously, the Bigger Pockets podcast was another podcast that I referenced, and obviously there's various other podcasts that are out there that have been kind of motivational for me, so I reference those. And then as far as the actual branding is concerned, I utilize Fiverr a lot. So I just went to Fiverr.com and I found a graphic designer that could create these types of podcasts, and I made sure I'd look through all their portfolio of work, and then I eventually hired someone to be able to create the podcast logo, etc. And then that was pretty much it. And that was the biggest outflow for us as far as the podcast episodes are concerned. As a recurring expense, obviously there's an editor. I'm not a very good editor, so I outsource that, and we're able to get all the podcasts done, both the MP3 and MP4 format, for about $60 an episode. And my business partner and I split that bill. So
nice. Speaking of business partners, because you got a partner on the podcast, how have you integrated your partnership with him on the podcast kind of into how you function as far as the commercial real estate space? Because whenever you tie your name as a partnership, particularly on a podcast or on a show, your name is tied to someone else in some form or fashion. How do you handle that? How does that dynamic work between the two of you?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the reason why we decided to pursue a partnership in the podcast, and also as an investment side, we have something we'll be announcing here in the near future. But essentially, why we decided to do it is because my co-host and my business partner Jeff Walston, he's in the commercial construction space. He's actually operated in the commercial construction space for about 15 years. He's been involved in all facets of the construction process. He's done ground-up construction of multi-million-dollar dental labs. He's built industrial properties. He's done all of it, and so he's got that expertise. I'm obviously the marketing, the sales, the branding guy, and so putting our two skill sets together is a pretty potent combination, and that's where we found would be of benefit to people that we're interviewing and our listeners. Because you get the perspective of someone who's coming at from the brokerage side, who's coming at from the analytical and investment side, and then you get the perspective of someone who has a real deep understanding of the construction process and can really get super granular with contractors and people who are on that side of the process and extract as much value as he can from them. So that's why we decided to go into business together. And obviously, I trust his integrity. He's a phenomenal guy and super honest and trustworthy, and so that's why I thought it would be a good idea to team up to do that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, it's because it's understated how difficult it is to find a good partner. Not to mention one that kind of fills in your spaces. Because I can tell you the number of times I've partnered with somebody that just did not work out. And that's not a negative towards them or even towards me. It's just how it goes sometimes. And I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's a great thing because it helps you to learn more about yourself. Now, matter of fact, in that vein, let's go into a little bit more. You mentioned earlier about your self-discovery. And I find that anyone that I talk to in the real estate space or the entrepreneurial space has a very distinct habit of learning about themselves as they're building a brand. As you built your brand, what did you learn about that yourself, and then how did that affect how you approached and how you dealt with the brand itself?
That's a pretty profound question. That's interesting. As far as what I learned about myself, I mean, I learned what I'm good at. I'm very good at being able to effectively convey a message to a broad group of people. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm able to do the podcast and have success with that and the YouTube channel and et cetera. And I'm also very good at the analytical side. I come from an engineering background, and I've always had an aptitude for numbers. And so when it comes to processing a vast amount of data, that's something that I'm very good at. I'm not the most handy person in the world. I mean, I try my best, but it just doesn't come naturally to me. And so that was something that I kind of learned.
You're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's just something I kind of learned early on, that it just wasn't something that I would be very good at. And then, yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of it. As far as everything else is concerned, I mean, just being okay with not everyone liking you. Because again, I think it's very easy for us, especially when we start creating content, to think, oh, what are other people going to think about it? When in reality, it really doesn't matter, because those who don't like the content are going to watch it. Or, so you really need to start talking towards people that you think would really gain value from that content, because those are the people that you're serving. You're not serving the people who don't like your content, because they're not going to be the ones who stick around. So I guess what I'm saying more so than anything is just putting yourself out there. It doesn't matter if you think you look silly. Everyone looks silly when they first start. Just get yourself out there and try it out.
Yeah, that is great and just profound advice, because that is definitely something that I know I've experienced quite a bit. I've literally had people say, hey man, you are just corny. Yes, I am. I am a cheese ball. But I tell you what, there's other cheese balls that are going to listen in, and they're going to want to be a part and looking to learn about real estate or commercial real estate, and they want to find somewhere where they feel comfortable. So I'd also, definitely back up that advice is talk to who you're going to talk to. They're going to like you. Your audience is waiting for you. They're out there. You just have to open your mouth and speak to them so that they can hear you. So exactly. I know you got things to do. Go ahead. Please go.
We interviewed a gentleman named JC on our podcast. He's a real estate lawyer in New York City, and he referenced something similar. And what he said, which I thought was awesome, was consider the source, meaning that if someone tells you something about your inability to do something, consider where it's coming from. Because in reality, people who are doing stuff that are out there really hustling and and getting some bruises when they're doing things aren't the ones that are going to be criticizing you. They understand how hard it is. They understand how difficult it is to get your feet wet and everything else. The ones who are going to criticize you are really the ones who aren't doing it. So just consider the source.
That is the absolute truth. Consider the source. I'm gonna quote that one later on the IG, just so you know, so it pops up. Don't be surprised. Now, with that said, I know you got quite a bit going on, and you're a busy guy. We got to kind of wrap up here. And for those of you who have tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to allow the floor now to Raphael so he can give you guys a rundown of where you can reach out to him, where you can connect with them, and we're also going to put the links to his books in the show notes on YouTube as well as on Facebook when it posts there. And Raphael, the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, of course. So if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to reach out anytime. My name is Raphael Collazo, as I mentioned. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me via my website at www.raphaelcollazo.com. As Oliver said, I've written several books, so feel free to check those out on Amazon. And then I do have a YouTube channel, so if you just type my name into YouTube, it should be the first thing that pops up. Feel free to subscribe. I also have the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast that I host. We release new episodes every single week, and so if you want to learn a little bit about the many facets of commercial real estate, feel free to subscribe to that as well. So,
fantastic, man. For those of you who are still watching, those who are watching after replay, if you've enjoyed this content, please, by all means, please subscribe, leave a comment, let us know that you're enjoying this, and that whatever questions you might have, I'll even shoot them to Raphael, and we'll see if we can get them answered, to get him to drop into the chat to speak to you guys as well, so you guys can get those answers to your questions. We're here to help. If you need us, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on IG at The Oliver Perry, or you can look on YouTube, of course, and look up The Oliver Perry. I'll pop up there too. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Raphael, thank you for being a part. I look forward to having you on again, which is going to happen. I've already told him it's going to happen. So I'm going to have Raphael back again, and we're going to talk more on real estate agent as part of his life. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.